My name is Ritu Bhandari. I'm a manager for sustainability in the policy and insights team at Economist Impact, and very delighted to be moderating this conversation, which is titled Getting on Board the Evolving Role of CSOs. Before we get started, a quick note for all of you to share your event memories on our event wall in the exhibition foyer. And to do that, please simply scan the QR code to upload a photo or video directly. And remember to tag us at Econ Sustainability Asia. And your memories will appear in real time on the social wall. With that, let's get started on this really interesting discussion that I'm very excited to be moderating. Before we jump into the conversation, if I can just introduce the panelists briefly. Just beside me is Naresh Tyagi, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail Limited. Following him is Jaime Urquio, who's the Chief Sustainability and Risk Officer at Ayala Corporation. And last but not the least is Philip C., who's the Group Chief Sustainability Officer and Chief Executive for Loyalty and Travel Services at Malaysia Aviation. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Charlie was just mentioning how the role of CSO's Chief Sustainability Officer has changed a lot in the past few years. Jaime, perhaps I could start with you.
Sure.
The first CSO known to be hired was in 2004, and we are 2 decades from that. A lot has changed since then, and the role is still evolving at the same time. What do the responsibilities look like?
Yeah, no, and thank you so much, Rita, for the question, and thank you to The Economist for inviting us here today. Definitely, I think a lot of evolution, even if you look at the sort of the three panelists here and some of the responsibilities within sort of our mandate and portfolios, I think that has evolved a lot. I think for us, what we're really seeing, I think especially with a lot of the headwinds that are now facing the industry as a whole, is that the role is really moving from kind of an advocate and really, really fantastic internal communicator and being pushed to really focus on value creation and really make a very, 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 very strong case for value creation in the different organizations that we're operating in. For us, and I've been in this role for a little over a year and a half, the mandate to me was very, very, very clear. Help shepherd a lot of these initiatives, but really focus on the numbers and really making those work. And so that's translated for us in introducing a sustainable investment framework that we now use when we look at all investments across the group. And a couple of initiatives that we're particularly excited about. We have one focused on some of the DEI initiatives that we're looking at, especially focusing internally, where in addition to trying to plug very, very, very clear gaps that we might have in our workforce, in some of the benefits that we're providing, there are really, really fantastic opportunities that come out from that. And so one specific working group that we had really focused on working mothers. We realized that we might not really be having the best benefits and best policies in place to address some of the working mothers in the group. In the Philippines, maternity leave is only about 3 months. And so we saw that a lot of the working mothers who were coming back into the company were still had sort of their minds obviously at home, leaving sort of their newborns at home. And the reality is that actually childcare services in the Philippines only cover 2 to 3 hours of the day. And so for a working mother who's working full time, clearly a gap there. So decided to sort of focus on that, and we have a very, very large office leasing business within the group. And so clearly a pain point for us, could we potentially use this as an interesting competitive advantage for the office leasing business as a whole, and sort of really latch onto that to start sort of exploring that. So a lot of different sort of pushes, but really focusing on value creation and how we can ultimately create impact for the group as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that and also bringing that example. I like it because when we say sustainability, a lot of us are always linking it with environment, but you brought in that social side of sustainability as well. And I wanted to ask you, is the role, a lot of the mandate, do you see more and more involving like social sort of initiatives as well? Or is it primarily environment focused?
I think really, really, really depends on the company and the sort of area of business that they're focused on. We have a very, very clear purpose at Ayala Corp, which is to build businesses that enable people to thrive. And so actually the social aspect has always been very, very sort of front and center for us. Of course, the environment and nature play a big role in that, and we have to sort of think through some of the externalities. But for us, it really, really has been very, very focused on the social, especially I think operating in a country like the Philippines with a lot of potential gaps and sort of issues there. That's really been a very, very big focus for us at Ayala Corp.
Thank you, Jaime. Philip, again, asking you the same question around what does it mean to be a CSO in the aviation industry, which has its own unique, we heard in some of the morning panels today as well, unique characteristic, a lot of scrutiny around sustainability and emission reduction, but also emissions that are very hard to cut, a lot of innovation happening at the same time. So what does it mean to be a CSO in the industry?
Well, I think the aviation industry has these characteristics of being a hard to abate sector, being a business where margins are very thin and very open to volatility. And thirdly, it's a very global business, right? And a highly mobile workforce. So it's really important to think about the institutions that drive it. Because if you imagine a flight that goes, let's say, from Kuala Lumpur to London, you're talking about markets that are connecting from multiple points, be it Philippines, Australia, Europe, and such. And to be honest, when we decided to get into sustainability 4 years ago, we were just coming out from the pandemic. We really had no clue how to do it, but we were just looking at our global airline peers, and Malaysia Aviation Group, being part of the One World Alliance, said, look, I think it's very important that we think about it, but how do we make sure that there's someone who can sit in the group corporate level and management level and discuss issues that are strategic in nature that have a huge integration with sustainability. And so, we are in this whole discovery process, and even just now when you introduced me, I double hat, right? I manage this role, I manage the loyalty business and also the e-commerce businesses, because we're kind of trying to land, right, what is the direction moving forward. But I think when you start, you don't know where the end state is, you're moving towards it, and as you unpack and you experiment and you find more things, then you realize the challenges that come with it, and then you put in place more detailed structure over a period of time.
Thank you, thank you. I'll come back to some of those points. Naresh, your take on this as well. Again, you're coming from a very interesting sector as well. So what does a lot of scope 3 emissions, a lot of different suppliers, but also internal teams, how do you get everyone on board as the CSO, and what does the role look like?
Thank you, economist, for having me here. I think this role of CSO has been evolved. Every year it keeps changing. It looks fancy designation, but a lot of things behind it. You have to collaborate with all stakeholders internally and externally. Sometimes you wear the cap of chief strategy officer. Other time you look into that chief operating officer, and then you have to look into that what are the impact you are creating, and chief impact officer also you become. So I think that I have seen this role evolving in last 10 years, but more important is that walking the talk, and CSO need to balance between strategy and execution so that it create impact. When you collaborate with the internal stakeholder, be it your strategy team, finance team, operation team, brand team, business team, even supply chain team, you have to bring your internal stakeholder. So you take a role of chief education officer, where you learn first what is net zero, decarbonization, etc., and you have to simplify and educate your internal stakeholder. Then bigger challenge come when you go to external stakeholder, your supplier, partner, vendor, etc. So I think this whole cycle of CSO role, every 3 years, you become either a strategy officer, or when you set the net zero target, you become chief transition officer. And you look into that, what is the source of energy, renewable, and you look into decarbonization pathway. So I think it's very, very holistic role. It's not related to environment, because ESG, you have to see governance, environment, and social. And getting into that all aspect of integrating sustainability into business DNA is, I think, true role of CSO. Uh, Everyone want to be CSO, but I think getting that challenge to make it part of business and part of operation is always depend on the individual, how you drive it, how you simplify it, because it's too complex to go into that sustainability, net zero, scope 1, 2, 3, and now people talk 4. So how you get MSME into that, how you get your investor into that, I think it's very, very challenging. So I see that role of chief sustainability officer going forward will be chief future officer, where you have to look into transition from theory to practice. And that is that, I think, head of CSO one should wear not only to talk in conference, but to get execution on ground, walk the talk. I think that is the something. I have seen that transition.
Thank you, Naresh, and kind of that highlights the complexity of the role, I guess, in a way as well. And I do want to ask you all later about the skills needed to be able to do that, because that sounds like a very difficult role. But before that, Jaime, if I could come back to you, and we've heard examples from different industries, and Ayala operates across sectors, right? Very different sectors: energy, real estate, banking, all have their different sort of challenges, different reporting requirements, I'm sure. How do you craft a sustainability strategy that works across so many domains, and what are the key sort of hurdles, if I may ask?
No, fantastic. And yeah, just a little bit of a background on Ayala Corp. So it's a 191-year-old diversified conglomerate based in the Philippines, interest in real estate, banking, telecommunications, renewable energy development, as we heard earlier from Mason, and some emerging businesses in education, healthcare, and mobility. So a lot of different industries there to sort of craft. So we really focus on trying to find golden threads that we really can sort of put throughout the portfolio. The first I mentioned, first and foremost, a very, very clear purpose that we have. Again, building businesses that enable people to thrive. That's really there and consistent across the portfolio. But then the other one is, how do we find golden threads that we can really rally around when it comes to sustainability? And for us, that came in a commitment in 2021 for net zero by 2050. It was something very, very actionable that we could sort of really rally around and sort of think through. And thinking between now and 2050, a sort of huge amount of time, but a huge amount that needs to be done across all the different sort of businesses. But incredible what starts to kind of blossom out of a lot of these. We heard from Mason earlier, clearly a big factor in going net zero is really focusing on scope 2 and sort of the energy that we sort of purchase. So how can we start transitioning the portfolio to renewable energy? ASIN plays a huge, huge, huge part in that, and we're very, very, very thankful that we now have about 60% of the whole group energy consumption coming from renewable energy sources. And the second was to really ensure that we were doing this in a very credible way. So with the 4 big companies that I mentioned, 2 of them already have their targets aligned to SBTI, which we thought was a very, very, very important factor to really focus on. But what's been really encouraging across these golden threads are some of the newer businesses that have emerged. We had at the time, struggling auto distribution business that was really focused on ICE, internal combustion vehicles, really kind of 7th or 8th in the market, not really growing very, very fast. But as we started to think about some of the vehicles within the Ayala group of companies, there was really at the time no one who was distributing EVs. So we saw this as a really, really fantastic opportunity to pivot the portfolio completely and focus 100% on EV vehicles. Ended up signing an exclusive distribution agreement with BYD, and from a complete standing start, now have close to 75% market share on the EV space. Still relatively small, but really, really growing and growing very, very fast. So again, the importance of these golden threads to really be able to sort of bring the company together across them has been very fruitful and sort of helpful for us.
Thank you for highlighting that, those innovations as well. And I just thinking about some of the challenges, right? And I know we were speaking earlier, Jaime. One concern that CSOs, I guess, would face is around greenwashing.
Right.
How big is that risk, and how can CSOs kind of prepare for that?
Yeah. Huge and very, very top of mind for a lot of us. And I think a lot of the advancements that we're now seeing in the reporting side of this, we hope will start to help this, because there were so many different standards, so many different metrics to sort of think about that there really wasn't an apples to apples comparison across this. And so I think that there was a danger of some greenwashing. I think the benefit of a lot of these headwinds that the industry or the sector is facing as a whole is that a lot of companies are now being asked to really come out with a lot more tangible and sort of credible sort of answers and results on this. I think there's going to be a lot less room for greenwashing, and I think companies are going to be asked to really stand up and provide a lot more credible and sort of data-focused answers, which I think is beneficial for the industry as a whole. And I know a lot of us are very, very excited for this to happen, to really ensure that there is true apples-to-apples comparison across it. Yeah.
Thanks for highlighting that. And Philip, if I can just build on that, probably Jaime mentioned about metrics, reporting metrics, standardization of those, right? What are some of the kind of good metrics that CSOs can use? And again, coming back to the aviation industry, which I think has a lot of long-term sustainability goals, what are some more immediate, realistic sort of metrics that you use or you can use as a CSO?
I mean, for us, 90% of our emissions is scope one, which is primarily our flights. And so really how you measure that is so important. Um, you know, the granularity of that is critical. I just give you an example. We are Asian-based carrier. We hardly fly to Europe, but suddenly we are asked to measure our European ETS requirements. We have 100 flights that do intra-European due to our cargo, and you're supposed to measure that data down to the granularity to your taxiing fuel, contingency fuel, alternate fuel, right? So, for us, there are key matrices depending on your strategy. For us, fuel emission is a very big one. But what's important is how detailed and granular can you go, and how do you build the data infrastructure to actually collect the data in a credible way? Because if you think about the airline industry, we are a global industry where we operate in multiple markets. Multiple markets have multiple jurisdictions. Multiple jurisdictions have different requirements to how you want to report the data. And so, as a CSO, you have to think about your infrastructure to how you collect the data.
Thank you. And what about using ESG as a metric? I know that has received a lot of backlash in
Yes.
the recent years, but there are still reports that show that more and more companies do continue using that. Like, is that something, again, that you see being used, or are there more like national sort of metrics that you end up using?
So the airline industry actually works with the global body IATA, and IATA does encourage certain amount of industry level matrices that we try and follow, right? So that you can kind of understand where we all sit comparable like for like. But even that's changing very fast, because depending on where you operate, like in Europe, you will have very different metrics and reporting requirements for CSRD per se. So that's the tension coming through, right? As you saw in the earlier panels, the taxonomies are becoming more complicated. So fundamentally, you go in and understand, look, what is needed in your hub jurisdiction, but not only that, in your respective jurisdictions as well that you operate in.
How much do you think can AI help with this, right? Because a lot of this revolves around a lot of complex information, data, and like you're saying, different regulations in different countries and regions. And are you seeing like use of AI models sort of to help with this?
I mean, we've talked to people about, potential of AI, but fundamentally still, you need to understand what you're collecting. So I appreciate why AI can be very valuable, but in some places where I operate on a subscale, let's say to Bangkok, right, and I want to secure catering information, my information is subscale. It doesn't have enough scalability to work. I operate in multiple markets. And so fundamentally, how do you build the data infrastructure where you can collate, collectively drive it? That's also very important, right? So I think AI is valuable, but I think there's some utility that we have to think about carefully.
Thank you. Naresh, coming back to you on, again, just the KPI and metrics that you use. And I have to bring the fashion industry again here, because there are a lot of claims that brands are making around from the products that are being used to the people who are working sort of in, making those products. But just in terms of your sort of internal metrics that companies are using, what works and what doesn't work?
So I think fashion as industry has extreme side. One very glamorous. Other side, when we look into supply chain, it's mostly in least developed country where cost of manufacturing is very low. How you balance all these things and put your KPI, which is very credible, and you use that transparency in that is one of the very, very important thing. When we started our journey in 2012, we call it Re-Earth for our tomorrow. And we have no sustainability department separately. It was business leader and top leader who was driving it. It became that time that our philosophy is that anything which can be done can be measured. If you measure it and you improve it, that delta is the impact you are creating. So we start looking into that what impact we have, whether it is environment, social, or business, because sometimes you need to look into business model for your alternate raw material, supply chain. So I think that whole KPI started in almost a decade back, and it happened in the same rhythm we do business financial review. So when you have your KPI, we well define all that KPI. We have 10 mission, energy, water, carbon, etc. And all mission was having a specific KPI, annualized KPI as well as quarterly review. And it become part of our business review, not separate review for sustainable. I think that help us a lot in terms of getting right strategy and implementation in harmony with that overall what we want to do. That build a lot of credibility, that build us a lot of confidence. We set target 2020. And I'm happy to share that more or less whatever we set that time target, we were able to achieve. Whether it is energy efficiency or zero waste to landfill. Even I'm very proud to say we are the only garment factory globally to have true zero waste certified facility in India. So that help us to get your confidence and business level. KPI, very, very important, but more important is that how you internalize it, how you incentivize it for your supplier, how you bring all your stakeholder to not only get aligned to it, but be partner in that making it happen. So I think this is matrix. That time I saw that when I took over role of CSO from Chief Operating Officer to CSO role, I say this is that something I have become now Chief Matrix Officer. So it's very, very important actually that to have reliability and credibility. Fashion as an industry, because it comes with that lot of fast fashion, ultra fast fashion. People want to claim, overclaim. And in India, I think luckily we don't overclaim. We don't do anything, which is we require to put anti-greenwash law or all these things. Because if you are genuine and you are transparent, then people believe and you have that credibility to that. Let me ask one question from the audience. How many of you buy your cloth which is on sustainability matrix? How many of you buy? Hardly 3 people, 4 people. So
I think
until
I'm,
unless
I'm
this
definitely one
whole
of them, maybe.
participant
Oh, no.
come into that buying the cloth and product and service, sustainability will remain conference. So we have to walk the talk. I think that is something I
That's
do
really
advocacy.
interesting, and that kind of takes the conversation back to consumer demand as well, especially in the
Yes.
fashion industry. But I know we are running out of time, and I do want to touch on another interesting aspect, Jaime, because we've been discussing a lot about KPIs and metrics and role of data that Philip, you mentioned as well. What kind of teams do you need sort of to deliver on these goals? Because it sounds like a lot of data, information, analysis is going into this.
Yeah.
Are you able to find that kind of skill set in Asia? That's my first question.
Yeah, so I think we look at it in kind of 2 buckets. I think, again, if you look at sort of the profile and the experience of my co-panelists, I think this concept or idea of a generalist is very, very, very applicable to the Chief Sustainability Officer, especially an individual who's had what we call kind of line experience or experience in a business. A lot of the work that we do is ultimately convincing and speaking to different stakeholders, and so I think really understanding their pain points and communicating this in a way that they can understand and sort of digest is a huge part of our job. Having said that, there is a huge part of this that is becoming extremely technical. And we, at least in the Philippines, are having issues finding some of this expertise. If I think about greenhouse gas accounting, especially for larger organizations that operate in multiple jurisdictions, the calculations involved are starting to become extremely complicated. And so I think a technical expertise or a sort of baseline is important. If I think about some of the reporting requirements, some of the metrics required for that, there's a lot of really, really interesting technical expertise, which little by little, some universities and schools are starting to focus on. Indonesia, I think we're very, very ahead of the curve with this and really started to focus on a lot of their schools to ensure that fresh graduates were coming out with some of these skill sets. The Philippines, unfortunately, still a little bit of catching up to do, but it's a big part of what we do is really working with educational institutions to start potentially feeding into this, because I think the use case for that technical expertise will only continue to grow as some of these reporting requirements become more and more stringent.
Yeah, thanks, Jaime, for pointing that out. And Philip, I'll ask you the same question, but before that, I'll come back to the audience after this. So if you have any questions, please do make a note of that. I see one already. I'll come back to you. If someone wanted to be a CSO, what are the top, like I know you've talked about a lot of things, but okay, let's condense it. What are the 2 or 3 sort of key skill sets you would say are needed to be a CSO?
Yeah, so just a bit of background. My team in MAG, we have 3 types of people. We have operations people who are the ultimate insiders. They know how to get things done. We have people who are passionate about sustainability, non-airline, so that they can inject new ideas. And we've got airline technical sustainability, people from other airlines who kind of know the technical stuff, right? So I think those 3 are very kind of important skill sets. So as a CSO, when my boss made me double head this role, I was like, why do you ask me to do this work? It's like, I have no clue what I'm doing actually. And his logic was, you are an insider, but not entirely an insider. You're open to learn, you understand the environment, you can manage the tensions of the short term and long term, you can manage the short terms of business and consumer and operations. And so you have to be comfortable with tension, of the different tensions, and reconcile and think very carefully how you integrate the sustainability work that you do call ESG and the sustainability work that we call, which is the business side, and think about it as very integrated and seamless as you were saying just now.
Thank you for that. Can we get, I know we have a question here, can we get a mic right in the middle here? So yeah, if you can please keep your question short and brief.
Thank you, Ritu. So my name is Tarun Amrasekara. I'm a senior lecturer from PIM Business School in Sri Lanka, specializing in sustainability. My question is a general question to all 3. When we talk about a CSO, I believe there's a lot of communication involved, both from a push side where you push your team members to get on board and get it going, and also the pull side where you get the customers to demand for you based on sustainability, connecting with what Naresh just now asked. How do you balance these 2, the push communication and the pull communication as a CSO? Just a question to all 3 for your thoughts. Thank you.
Anyone wants to take that? Very focused on communications around both sides. Go ahead.
I think it's very, very important question. Thanks, you ask it. Because what you are doing, you need to communicate and you have to educate your internal and external. So communication is very critical. So I think that both approaches require push and pull. Because sometimes it's mandatory requirement you have to communicate to outside world. And internally you have to communicate for people to do more. So you have to keep it very simple. And you have to educate basically internally you have to make more sustainability champion. Whether it is corporate communication department or finance department or HR department. The more you communicate and more you train people, I think that internal communication is important. External is more mandatory, where you have to follow the standard global or national, you have to follow that framework and all these things.
Thank you. Any other comments? I can come back for one more question, but any other quick comments?
For the most part, at least for us, we're not necessarily consumer facing. So a big part of our job is to really work with the stakeholders who are ultimately consumer facing and ensuring that we are helping to build these business cases. Nobody knows these businesses better than the individuals who are ultimately running these businesses. And so a big part of our job is, as was mentioned earlier, stakeholder education to really ensure that this makes sense for their business. This is not necessarily going to be a drag or a detriment to the business they're doing. And finding that use case and finding that business case is sometimes challenging, but that's actively what we spend a lot of our work doing. Because if that internal stakeholder believes in it, if that internal stakeholder believes that they're going to be able to do better by adopting these things, then ultimately the external communication flows a little bit more naturally.
Thank you, Jaime. Are there any other final questions in the room? Just final call because we're almost at time. Okay, I don't see a hand, so maybe we can wrap up. We're almost at time here. Thank you so much. This was really interesting, very different and unique perspectives from all of you. So thank you for sharing all of that. I want to also thank Ayala Corporation for sponsoring the event and this session. And now we have the next interview, but before that, please do join me in thanking our current panelists for this conversation.